Our film begins with a girl named Tina, and what appears in her appearance is that she is different and more like an animal, and this causes her embarrassment due to her appearance, assistant, and we learn that she works as an officer in the customs office, and who has the strange and supernatural ability to smell the scent of travelers and be able to distinguish their feelings and punish smugglers, and one day at her job she is able to distinguish the smell of a traveler, and she knows he had a bag containing alcohol, so he started taking it from it. She swallows the bag and her friend swallows it, so the young man tells her that he bought it, so she keeps taking it because he is a young bird. And Eggbird agrees with the young man instead of imprisoning him on charges of smuggling. At the end of the day, Tina returns to her house and we isolate in the forest, and we find out that she has a friend of hers named Ronald in the house who works as a dog trainer, and at that time she is very afraid when the dog attacks her, so they take Ronald, and he tells her that he has a disease, so she becomes ignorant of his words and leaves. She is walking in the forest, and there she prefers to explore everything around her, and it appears that she is interested in nature and is more in love with animals. On the next day, she brings Tina to work and pursues her hobby of smelling travelers, but then she stops a traveler and takes him to search him with her colleague, who shows that there is nothing in his bag, but Tina is determined to take him with him. Something was against the rules, so I asked him for a phone, and the first time I smelled it, a small slice comes out of it, so the young man quickly takes it and they put it in a bug, but they are able to get it out and arrest him. Tina goes back to her work again, but this time she is unable to distinguish the smell of a close traveler towards her, and it appears that he looks very similar to her and has the same physical characteristics that resemble animals, so she asked to search him, but he did not. You find nothing but insects with him, so you fly away and leave him because there is no criminal suspicion against him yet. At work, Tina visits her father in the nursing home, and we learn that he suffers from early Alzheimer's disease, and she is very happy when he remembers her, knows her name, and she stays with him. He asks about Ronald, and she sees that he is taking advantage of her now that she is in her home without paying rent or even expenses, and we know that the length of time he has been with Tina has never had a relationship, and this is because she sees herself as lonely and physically different from him. So she tells him Tina. She loves having him with her, and this is because she does not like to stay at home alone. And at night, Tina comes home and tells Ronald that she visited her father today, and that his condition is so bad that at one point he will not be able to remember him or distinguish him, and it will be very clear to Ronald that he does not like Tina, and all he cares about is staying with her because he does not spend it. And on the next day, Tina meets with her direct supervisor, Agneta, and who knows her that the chip it is full of pornographic images of children, and she is surprised at how Tina was able to recognize the slide he has, even though it is the first time she has seen it. She would love to know what is inside, but she was able to smell her scent on him, and she continues by saying that she can smell this type of thing, except that she feels the feelings of what is in front of her, whether sexual, anger, or even psychological. She then took her to her office and found out that the young man denied all the charges she was directed to him, but she doubted that he knew who was making the films, so she searched his phone and found that he was always going to an area outside the city, and she knew that she could not get a search warrant, and this was because there was no specific criminal that she would catch, and that is why she assigned him this task so that she could reach him. In the movies, on the next day, Tina meets the same person again, but this time she asks for a self-search. This is because she smells his scent. She is unable to identify it, nor is she able to arrest him. The one who is exposed to her supernatural ability for the first time is in her colleague's hand, and they open it. When he comes out, he tells her that he is transgender, and one of his body parts appears to be a woman. He learns that he has a scar on his back, and the first time Tina hears what he says about the scar, she is very young, and we know that she has the same scar on her back, so she goes in and apologizes to him, feeling guilty for it. She goes to him and tells him that he has the right to file an apology case against her. He tells her that there is no need for all of this. He introduces himself and tells her that his name is Fari and that he is an entomologist. He always travels from place to place and does not stay in a specific area. Then Tina visits her father and asks about the scar on her back. He tells her that she fell on something small, and she was 3 years old at the time, and at that time they took her to the hospital and stitched her up. So he leaves her in disarray, and he learns that his wife, Esther, is about to give birth, and she must be transported to the hospital as soon as possible. On the way, she suddenly stops in the car, and her neighbor takes great advantage of the reason for her standing, but they are surprised inside, or they are close to them, and at night, Tina appears while she is sleeping, and then Ronald enters her and tries to have a relationship with her, but she refuses and throws herself on the ground and stares. At that time, she looks out the window and is very happy when she finds an animal in front of her and in the other. One day, she delivers figs to the hotel where Uri is sitting, and she sees him in the garden collecting worms and pets. When she sees him, he eats them, and then he asks her to try crushing them, and when she refuses, he forces him to put one in her bug. The strange thing is that she likes the taste, so he smiles smiles about his life in the hotel, so he tells her that he doesn't like the place, but he has to. He sits in it, and at the end of the day, Tina returns with Aria to the house, and it appears that she wants to sell him the guest room. She takes him and gets to know Ronald, and then she takes him to the room. There, Fari sees a mark on her face, so she tells him that lightning struck her when she was young. He tells her that he also has the same mark on his chest, and he relieves her, but then he approaches her and tries to kiss her, but she runs away from him, and she tells him that she is tired and needs to sleep, and she walks away and he appears. Ronald said he did not like his presence and felt afraid for him, and the day after that, Tina appears watching with her colleague, the person who has wanted to be monitored, and then he appears in front of her, and she smells from his scent that he has something to do with sex or rape, so he gets wet and sees the building, and she tries to reach the apartment he entered as quickly as possible, and her colleague tells her that he is very afraid that someone will report them, especially since they do not have a search warrant, so she gives it and starts smelling. There is a smell in the place, and it gradually resembles the smell of a small child, but suddenly an apartment opens. She is one of the people standing in front of her and asking her friend what they are doing, so she turns to Tina, but her colleague can act quickly and walk away, and then Tina meets his unborn child, and whoever she says tells them that they should be more careful than that, so Tina tells her that she is sure that they are doing something to a child, and her colleague tells you that he also heard the voice of a small child from inside the apartment, even though the child may have been kidnapped or his data was not recorded. And after work, we see Tina with Ari, and she tells him more about herself, and you learn that when she was young, she saw that she was wild and different from the rest of her kind, but when she grew up, she found that she was a normal human being and that all she had was a chromosome defect. Fawari scratches her words and tells her that there is nothing wrong with her, so she tells him that she is the only one. She is unable to give birth to a child, and then Tina appears with Esther, carrying her young daughter and trying to have sex with him. Motherhood, but the child continues to cry and takes Esther, and Stephen enters with Fawari with him, and they learn that he is their new neighbor, and he plays with the little girl, and then he goes back to his room, but what happens is that he appears to be in pain from pain, and then he goes out into the forest so that no one can hear his voice, and he sits on the ground, and it appears that something small has come out of him. Then he relaxes and returns to his normal state. On the second day, Tina appears watching the apartment she wanted. Her colleague, who is the first to notice that the apartment owners have left, tells her that they have an hour to search the house before they return, and the two of them go down quickly, and Tina is able to open the apartment door according to her experience, and they too enter the apartment, and they walk carefully, and then Tina finds a baby bed and learns that the child was present nearby, and she enters his room, the office, and you continue to smell the room until you find a hanging cup, so you start take it, and the first time you open it, you find inside a video camera which shows children under torture. Then the investigations begin with the owner of the apartment, and we learn that his name is Patrick. At that time, Agnet asks him about the bed of the child that she found in his apartment, and even though he does not have children, it is permissible for her to know that he had a 1-year-old child. Under his care, she can ask social services about the truthfulness of his words, so he tells the video activist that he doesn't know anything about it, but she was amazing to know that there were fingerprints on the camera and DNA, and she asked about the girl in the video, so he explained that he knew her or that he filmed this video, and when she came back home again, Ronald looked at her and told her about immediately, and he knew that his behavior was strange, and he always came out of his room at strange times, and then he appears immediately and eats worms. He has a box with him, puts it in the refrigerator and closes it tightly, and on the second day we see Ronald. He is traveling to attend a dog show and hopes that he will win the best show. He asks Tana to call him if she needs anything or anything, and after a few moments, Fari knocks on her and goes in to sit with her, but suddenly they hear the sound of lightning, and they both become so afraid that out of fear, they go down under the blanket, and at night they appear together. In the forest, Tiny smiles at herself, so he tells her that she is a dwarf, and if the chromosome was changed, he would give her a male marker, so she would no longer be a dwarf. And his advantage is that they have a strong sense of smell, and lightning is always right, and he tells her that it is best to cut it up and get rid of it. He knows that there is a group of dwarves who separated them in Finland, and in order to reach them, she must allow them to meet him, and that he himself should meet her so that he can take her with him so that they can be together. A few days later, Ronald returns home and appears. He was eating with Tana and Fowry and was surprised by the relationship between them, so they told Fowry that they were relatives and an old friend. To the family, on the second day, Tina arrives at work, and she appears tired and exhausted to the point that her colleague hears the sound of Cahal's voice with the passengers, and she does not smell their scent, so he tells her that it is better to take a leave to rest. And at night, Tina appears with Fowry, who tells her that she has been able to adapt to people as evidence that she has a job. The Beta, Pete, and Green know that humans are afraid of them, and this is because they know that the Falcon is coming. He tells her that he doesn't know anything about her family, but all he knows is that medical experiments were performed on his body in the 1970s, which allowed him to live for 10 years after the torture he went through, after which he was transferred to an orphanage, and he knows that the human race is all evil and that you should never depend on them. This is the biggest example of thus. Her father lied to her all her life, and when the day broke, she would get into her car and go to visit her father there. She tells him that all her life she thought she was bad, and everyone was disgusting with her, and her father got angry at her and told her that she should talk to him politely, so she started crying and asked about her real family, and then the nurse came in and came out and told her that the visit was over, so she started to walk away, so exhausted that she returned home and was patient. It's all about Ronald, and she throws the television at him in the street and tells him that from today he will not live. She is with her and gives him a period of time until she wakes up from her sleep so that he can take care of himself and walk before she wakes up. Then she visits Tina Fori in his room and is surprised that he has locked the refrigerator refrigerator tightly. He tells her that each one of them has his own privacy, so she is very happy with this news, and after a while, Tina returns to his room a second later, but at that time it varies from the outside of the refrigerator, so you like to open it and find a box inside it. She is shocked when she sees a small child who looks strange and frightening inside the box. She becomes very frightened and returns the refrigerator a second time. On the second day, she appears in the investigation with the owner of the apartment and his wife Patrick, and she confesses, and she is devastated, that none of them harmed the children and that they were just taking pictures of them, and she says, oh, devastated that she saw the person who asked. She does this only once, and he is the one who was bringing the children to them, and in the police car we see who left and who took them to show them the location of the person who asked them to take pictures of the children, but then an animal crosses their path and suddenly he takes Patrick out of the car with a person on him and kills him. She delivers a fig to the crime scene and looks into the mind of the one who did this. She philosophizes about him and is shocked that he did that. She asks about the child in the refrigerator and he tells her that he is not a child. He is just an injection of unfertilized eggs, and as long as he is in the refrigerator, he is safe, and knows that he is the one who gave birth to her, and they always take it out regularly, and it feeds on worms, and the body of the syringe looks exactly like children's and is soft, but they do not live for a long time, so he smiled about the reason that made him keep it, so it was sold. It is that he takes human children as they tortured him and sells them, and they must suffer like him, so she decided to force us to face him. She says that someone is sick and comes out of his room, exhausted from illness, and there is another. One day she wakes up from her sleep and wishes for the forest and begins to eat from the worms on the trees, but then she responds to the ambulance at her neighbor Esther's, so she enters to see what is happening, and she philosophizes that her eyes are not clear, so she gives here that Fury is the one who did this, and she runs to his room and finds him disappearing. Even the box is not there, and she finds him missing. She has a paper on which it is written that she is not human, and he asks her to meet him on the boat, and she actually goes to him. Therefore, he breaks up when he sees her and tells her that he did not expect her to hear what he said, and he tells her that because it is time, their forces will unite and gather a large number of them, so she feels sorry for him and tells him that evil roles are not suitable for her, and that she does not like to hurt anyone, and that she will go to the police and arrest him, but Ori will go out of his way to silence them. He is able to escape and throw himself into the water. After that, Tina meets her father and learns her true identity from him, and he tells her that he used to work in a mental hospital where he met her family and the rest of her clan. At that time, he proposed to him and he raised her and took care of her. He learned that her name was Riva and that her family were buried in the old cemetery behind the main building. At that time, Tina went to the place of their grave and planted plants that exploded in front of the door of her house. She began to take him and open up and philosophize, but he was big, so she began to take him and report, raising him, and when she finds him hungry, she eats him with insects, and the child smiles at her. This video was written by Dalia Mahmood and recorded by Mohammed Tahir. This is The Trick, and its producer is Mahmood Tahir. And don't forget to follow the 55 movie page to follow the dramatic summaries, follow the Mohammed Tahir page to follow the comedy summaries, and follow the Hakone Matata page to follow the anime and cartoon summaries. Peace be upon you.